All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We have the January edition of our Community Entrepreneurship Hour, and we have a really special presentation to share with you all today. We wanted to share one of our partners in the Center on Rural Innovation's Rural Innovation Network. We've been watching Taos, New Mexico develop their local entrepreneurship ecosystem around efforts with the Taos Hive. And so I've had the opportunity not just to get Rose, but to actually go out and see the hive and see the ecosystem in place, and really impressed with what they're doing in Taos. And I think as we get to know these other communities, I think there's a lot we can learn from how they've approached things and faced similar problems and looked at similar opportunities. So it is my pleasure to kick this off. And what we're going to do today is, by focusing on Taos, I wanted to put together a panel that could really showcase everything that's going on. So Molly Pyle with Rural Innovation Strategies is nice enough to come on and introduce Rose and introduce a little bit about how their work works nationwide, but works in communities like Ada and Taos. From there, Reza with Taos Hive will present about her story and her experience working with the Taos ecosystem and developing entrepreneurs and the digital economy in that community. And then I'm really excited that we're going to be able to feature an entrepreneur, an artist, someone that's really integral to that work in Taos with Agnes Chavez. So Rose will be introducing her, and we'll follow it up with a discussion. So that's our format for today. With that, I'll hand it off to Molly Pyle.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Really excited for this conversation. I just need to be able to share my screen.
Okay, you should be enabled to.
Oh, perfect. Great. All right. So as Jim mentioned, I am from the Center on Rural Innovation, and we are a nonprofit action tank. And we really exist to advance inclusive rural prosperity. And we do that through the creation of what we call digital economy ecosystems. And these are really just places, communities that can really create and support scalable entrepreneurship, tech startups, and digital job and tech job creation. And we do that because we are, for the first time, or really the biggest and greatest time in history, facing this massive rural opportunity gap. And our organization we were founded in 2017 to minimize this gap. And you can see here, rural is this green line here. We have been really losing job growth, and particularly, especially the impacts of COVID have made that even worse in rural communities all across the country. And why this happened, the drivers of this really persistent and growing opportunity gap, they can stem from things like automation of really generally rural jobs, globalization, and the 30-year decline of entrepreneurship. And that's largely why the Center on Rural Innovation is really committed to creating inclusive ownership of production in this advancing age of automation. So helping folks in rural areas become tech entrepreneurs, create the products that are going to be used in the former factories and farms and office spaces of today and tomorrow. That's what we believe is really, really critical to inclusive economic development from our perspective. And I have the fantastic job of really getting to support rural ecosystem builders like Jim and like Rose, who you'll hear from, in building out their strategies to make this happen. I get to do that every day in my role as an entrepreneur ecosystem builder, helping them think about this from the startup perspective. But there's a few different lenses from which we approach this work. Both Jim and Rose and many other rural community leaders that we work with have become very familiar with this particular image. It is our model for a digital economy ecosystem, which again is really the goal, or the sort of main point or thrust of what we're hoping to achieve in terms of outcomes for all the rural communities that we work with. So we want to create this digital economy in the hopes and the goal and the vision that it's going to bring local wealth creation by rural folks starting tech startups that can then create really quality digital employment for their neighbors, for their friends, for their community. And then also helping folks in rural areas find high-paying jobs, tech jobs, maybe digitally through remote work, or through local organizations that actually need tech talent. So we're supporting rural communities in building a strategy around these direct drivers. That's what we call these sort of 5 core themes of the digital economy. And that's scalable tech entrepreneurship support and incubation. That's what I really work with on our community leaders. to build out in their ecosystems. We also have digital workforce development and support. So creating the tech talent, creating that pipeline that the future startups of Ada and Taos are going to tap into to grow their businesses. Access to capital. Every good startup needs fund to scale, needs money. And then inclusive tech culture, making sure that the folks working at these tech startups, the people who are hired for the remote work and the future jobs that are going to be created by folks in Ada and the Taoseños of Taos are really representative of the entire community, really reflective of the full diversity of the community, and ensuring that every single person who has an interest or even the slightest inclination to check out tech jobs, entrepreneurship, future of work, that they feel welcome, they feel like they have full access to these programs in these spaces. So really creating those on-ramps. And then of course, access to digital jobs where folks can really understand this ecosystem is accessible, what it's all about, and find that job that's going to, really move the needle for them in terms of income. And maybe that's a job created by startups. All of that happens when you have broadband, you have strong local leadership, again, like organizations like what Jim and Rose lead, and then co-working and entrepreneurship spaces, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and Rose will tell you more about later on. And it's through the Rural Innovation Initiative, is a cohort program that we provide that Jim and Rose went through, actually together in the same cohort. And that's how we really help some communities develop these digital economy ecosystems. That's through that cohort. They're really given an intensive technical assistance process. We do it all online now because of COVID, but prior used to visit a community, roll up our sleeves and whiteboard out what the vision and what the future could hold for these rural communities, really building that strategy. And then once they actually are through with that Rural Innovation Initiative process, they join our Rural Innovation Network, which I will share with you a little bit about, but it's an incredible community of over 25 rural communities across the country that are really all aligned in building these digital economies locally. And then we also share data and insights and help communities understand more of the economics and the nuance of what's happening, really. Who has jobs? What do they look like? What kind of funds are people getting for the startups that they might be starting? And how can we really increase that? And as we really continue this work, I mean, it's fantastic to see you're going to understand some of the benefits of being part of the Rural Innovation Network are what we're making happen here today, where you might not think there are a lot of similarities maybe between Ada, Oklahoma and Taos, New Mexico. But one huge thing is they've been through this process. They're thinking about the digital economy and the future of their communities in a similar way, while also kind of acknowledging and honoring the cultural differences, the community context that are unique to these spaces and places. So we'll see how all of this comes together and how do we really make this happen. A big way is, acknowledging it takes resources for digital economies to start, to thrive. Somebody's got to pay for all of this. So that's why a big focus of our work is also providing support for communities to apply for federal grant funding. And Ada actually participated in last year's cohort program where we worked with them to build an application for the Economic Development Administration's Build to Scale program. And you all may or may not have heard the fantastic news that Ada actually won. So their grant application to Build to Scale was successful. So some of this, actually $13 million that we've helped rural communities raise, is going to Ada to build a more robust and inclusive startup community and digital economy. And Taos, who you're going to hear from in just a moment, is actually now getting ready to apply for Build to Scale and will take place in the same cohort that Ada took place in last year. And it's getting started next week. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to being in a year from now able to say that Taos has also won, and this number is even greater. And all of that funding really enables and makes possible the creation of startup programs, better digital skilling boot camps, and also just generally innovation hubs, these physical spaces where the digital economy and the assets can all be really centralized and accessible under one roof. So Taos, New Mexico has a gorgeous space like this that actually Jim and I were lucky enough to get to visit a couple months ago. It's the Taos Hive, which Rose will tell you more about. And Ada is on its way to building a similar innovation hub where all of these incredible amenities can be sort of co-located under one roof and help folks access the digital economy in a real hands-on kind of way. So excited about these spaces. And again, excited to see that they are all over the country. Ada and Taos are just 2 of 25 communities actively working with us to build and scale these innovation hubs and their digital economies locally. So this map here shows all of the Rural Innovation Network communities, and just kind of, you can see a little bit of the size and scope of what they're doing here. These 25 communities across 18 states, 4 time zones. It's a population of 1.6 million, about the size of Phoenix, Arizona. And they have done incredible things. 600 residents of our network communities have completed more than 7,000 hours of digital skills training. Rose might tell you about how one of the folks who completed a digital skills boot camp in Taos actually was later hired by someone from the same co-working space that she runs. So incredible stories of real impact happening here across this network every day, and really inspiring to see Ada and Taos, being part of this and being members of this wider group of visionaries. And so with the Rural Innovation Network, what we've done is really create that space for folks to share ideas, share what they're doing, collaborate in events like this, and also share knowledge, access our team of experts, folks who can share playbooks and frameworks and support on everything from hiring your accelerator program manager to running your coding bootcamp. And then resources and partnerships. We also have a fund actually that can invest in startups from rural communities across the country. And we have partnerships with some digital skilling providers, some national organizations, and some legal support for entrepreneurs, a mentor network as well for startup founders. Any of you out there want to tap into that, it's here for you as a benefit of Ada being in our network. And then lots of connections that they make between them. So local leaders, again, like Jim and like Rose, they get to meet each other every day, talk about some of the trials and tribulations, but also some of the incredible joys that come from really dedicating their work every day to building better futures and better digital economies for their hometowns or their home communities like Taos and like Ada. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce you to Reza and have her tell you much more exciting and authentic updates from Taos, a beautiful, beautiful place that I feel very privileged to have visited. And I encourage all of you, check it out. There's really some magic in that space and in that community. And Rose is one of those key folks, I think, making a lot of possibility and a lot of things happen there. So I will pass it to you, Rose, to share a little bit more about Taos, New Mexico, one of our Rural Innovation Network communities, and see how it might compare and contrast to the wonderful Ada, Oklahoma. Thanks, y'all. You're muted, Rose.
Yeah, I figured that out. Thank you, Molly. It's always good to see you. And I was really honored to have both Molly and Jim with us when we had our grand opening recently, June of this last year. When you look at the Hive, and my name is Reza. I'm the program specialist for UNM Taos Hive. Taos Hive is the hub of internet-based vocation and education. So it's the very first co-work, business support, UNM and other courses all under one roof that we've had in our community. I think that really pretty much exists in northern New Mexico. It really, the idea of the Hive started many, many years ago. Our founder, Nina Gonzalez Feliz, was really looking at what does our community need to really create pathways out of poverty? What is it going to take to really empower our community members so that they can compete on a national and global basis? What kind of resources do they need? How can we integrate the CTE, the educational models that really prepare them with the skills to succeed in today's world? And so that idea happened before I ever came into the picture, and through a lot of different grassroots community meetings that were held here in the town of Taos. Nina began to really grassroots with a lot of our key leaders within our community to see if there was interest. And so in 2018, she kind of got the idea of this co-work business support, the 3 core strategies, which we have are education, entrepreneurship, and engagement. As that model began to build and develop, they brought me in, I think in 2018, and we took off to compete in the Minds That Move Us competition in Florida. And it was an application process, and hundreds of applications were submitted, and we were lucky enough to be selected. And that really was our first. So here we go, rural Taos going to Metro Miami, competing against all these metro markets, and we won. So we came back, and that was really the first capital we ever received that really allowed us to start building the pipeline towards the opening of the Hive. And it's a very interesting model, because it is a model that is truly a community-wide partnership. When you look at the beautiful building we have, Kit Carson Electric Cooperative is a core partner. Taos Community Foundation is a core partner. UNM Taos is a core partner. And we have, Fat Pipe New Mexico is a partner, providing all of their expertise in co-work management. I don't even have to worry about that aspect. They're so good at it. They have the system down. It manages like clockwork. They have the technology that manages the processes, and so it's really, and they furnished it. So it really, this whole aspect of true community collaboration to create an organization to support a community, the Hive is the true example of that. And when I was, before you had the opportunity, before you invited me, I started looking back at some of our old goals, stuff that was written, because before we ever became a cohort of the Center of Rural Innovation. And by the way, we were number 18. Okay, so just always remember that, because I know the goal is to be 100 someday. But I remember when Nina and I received the notice that I on 28, what Jim, was it 2018? 2019.
I think it was late 2019.
Yeah, 2019, we received the notification that we were going to become part of this cohort. And, there is nothing more powerful than to be able to, through networking, through sharing best practices, or sharing those failures, which my father always said, there's nothing, the F in failure doesn't stand for failure. The F in failure stands for feedback. So he would say, consider yourself a bad example and get over it, move forward. And so, but bringing all of these rural community leaders together, and that's where Jim and I had the opportunity to really start getting to know each other, is just an incredible opportunity. And there's nothing more powerful than the power of collaboration. And so as we worked together, because we had to put together a strategy on the 5 direct drivers of economic diversification, it really brought clarity to me about, really how in alignment we were with the original vision of when we opened the Hive, because it's all about digital empowerment. It's all about creating pathways towards living wage jobs. But it's also, how do you stimulate the creativity within our community and within our youth, which that's why I'm so excited Agnes is with us today, because we really have to look at things out of the box. How are we going to, we cannot continue to do things the same way. Things are changing. We have to be flexible. We have to think out of the box when it comes to engaging and empowering and spiking that interest towards educational opportunities that exist. And so I'm really excited because, focusing on the 5 direct drivers of economic diversification, even before our doors were opened, which they opened in June, the Hive has been able to get 150 of our community members through digital training classes, 11 with certifications, 1 nano degree, and 1 in a position to become an IT, hired to be an IT support specialist, all in the midst of the COVID of this pandemic. So what I say, there's no excuses, no matter what our challenges may be, we have to continue to focus on the positive and the importance of being servant leaders to our communities, because the sky is the limit. There's so much potential. And, when you look at the engagement piece, yes, we've had to go hybrid, and we've had a number of events. We had our first event last night on NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which was quite interesting. I'm learning that myself. But, it's as we learn together about the opportunities that exist in this digital ecosystem that we live in, it's a great learning curve to open the doors of opportunity for our community members. And there was quite an interest. I mean, we had a good group that came, and it was 2.5 hours because they did this game afterwards, which it was pretty long, but we had 14 that stayed because they wanted to win those. They wanted to work on that on the NFTs and work through that process and learn. So I was excited about that. But the Hive has brought, since we've opened the Hive, we've been collaborating with True Kids One, which is a digital media nonprofit that works with children on film, and it's just amazing to me how quickly the youth grasp technology. They come in within a week, they're filming, they're editing, they're producing a movie, and so I see, the quicker we can engage our community members with the opportunity that and the knowledge and the skills and the access to digital opportunities, the more opportunities that will exist for them in the future. And so the Hive we haven't even been open a year, but I feel that we're going, we have a huge opportunity, and we're going to continue to focus. I can't stress enough to all the rural communities the need for digital training. And we're kicking off, I don't know if you are, Jim and Ada, but we're kicking off the Microsoft program. Actually, enrollment ends now in January. And January 19th, and we already have 26 community members enrolled in that. And this is going to be the first training program that's going to lead the students into an internship with local businesses. So it's this is all a learning curve, but another opportunity that the Center of Rural Innovation has provided us with, and that we are so grateful for. And as Molly said, I'm going to suffer through the build to scale. It's going to be a lot of work, but I say you have to try, right? We have to try and learn from it. So that's another opportunity. And we're also applying for the EDA Good Job Challenge under the partnership of the Center of Rural Innovation. And so I'm really excited about what the difference the Hive can make. The pandemic has impacted all of us as far as the amount of traffic, the amount of events. We have to be safe. But I always say, if there's a will, there's a way. And so thank you for having us today, Jim. I really appreciate your support. And I wanted to take a second, I invited someone I respect very much to be with us today. And if I were to read her bio, I would be here for weeks, because she's such a talent. And I've learned to really love what she's doing. And as I've been in this community, we have so many incredible leaders in Taos. And Agnes Chavez is really, I believe her approach is an approach that many of us need to take when it's engaging youth and getting them excited about looking at things differently. That we have to get our youth involved in science, our youth involved in math, our youth involved in art. And Agnes is doing all of that. And just a real quick highlight, Agnes Chavez is a Cuban-American interdisciplinary artist, educator, and the founder of STEMarts Lab. She's also the founder of the Paseo project, co-founder, I should say. and educator. She's developed art-based curricula and STEM programs for scholastics, 516 Arts and Los Alamos National Laboratory, as well as STEMarts curriculum tool for the ISEA 2012 Electronic Arts Festival in 2012. She is the founder and developer of the SUBE, Teach Language Through Art, Music, and Games program, now in its 25th year. And she's a true example of the leadership we need to really get the youth engaged on all the incredible things that exist towards pathways, towards higher education, and the difference, and really in an instrumental way of empowering our youth. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Agnes Chavez, and we're really blessed to have her in our community.
Thank you, Rose. Likewise, thank you for the work that you do in the community. So I'd like to share my screen if that's possible. Great. So thank you for having me here. I was so excited, first of all, Molly, to hear your presentation and to hear more about what this program is. Wow, I'm very excited to hear the details of what you're doing. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna share with you through example what I do. So I'm an artist and I'm an educator. They go hand in hand for me. And as Rose mentioned, I'm the founder of the STEMarts Lab, which is a 501c3, which became officially a nonprofit during the pandemic. But I've been running the program since 2009. And the 3 steps that I follow are that I design sci-art installations and interdisciplinary collaborations. And then I build educational programs and curricula around them. And then I share the final student-created sci-art installation at festivals that are free, community focused in order to reach the larger audience and diverse audience. So the mission of STEMarts Lab is to design immersive sci-art experiences that develop artistic, scientific, and humanistic literacy to empower youth to become creative participants and informed global citizens in the new 21st century workplace. This model I created in 2009, and it's been my guide since then. The 4 pillars that guide all of my the design process of art and education programs. And I also work with teachers to do professional development training that to share with them the strategies that I've developed over the years on how to really bring these out of the box, innovative ways of empowering our youth through the schools, but working in collaboration with the community. So I'm going to jump right in and show you examples because that's the best way. So as Rose mentioned, I am a founding member of the Paseo Festival, which brings arts into the streets of Taos, and I focus on the new media arts. And from 2014, when the festival was founded, until 2019, when I stepped away to expand on my STEMarts program, I was the education director, and I developed the STEMarts at the Paseo Youth Program. So here's a video from the 2018 festival. The Paseo is a free annual festival that brings projection, installation, and performance art to the streets of Taos, transforming community through art and art through community. Every year, the STEMarts at Paseo Youth Program supports the annual festival to connect youth and community to the latest trends in science, art, and technology. The 2018 youth program was built around the festival's theme of space, from virtual reality stations where youth experience otherworldly landscapes to a GPS interactive installation that transports students into outer space and back, to hacked gaming technology that helps raise awareness to noise pollution in our oceans. For the Paseo 2018 festival, close to 700 students from 12 schools in Taos County participated in visiting artist workshops, STEAM activities in the classroom, and a county-wide youth day in the Space Cloud. What makes STEMarts and Paseo Youth Program so exciting is that students get to collaborate with the artists to create the art that then becomes part of the festival. So students are no longer just spectators, they become active participants. This is the perfect platform for students to play, explore, and imagine a better world. For more information. So there's an example of festival collaboration to bring workshops and youth and engage them in the festival. So during the pandemic, all of the workshops were canceled, festivals were canceled, and I particularly had an 8th grade class that was going to meet me in Europe at the science laboratory there, the CERN science laboratory, where I've been, where I did a residency and I did an art installation in collaboration with scientists there, and it all got canceled. So I thought, what can I do that can compete with a trip to Europe to CERN? So and I had these 8th grade class that I've been working with since 4th grade. That was their graduating project. So that inspired me to start STEMarts International. And it's an international youth exchange that connects a classroom in New Mexico with a classroom in another country to co-create a sci-art installation. And that gets presented at festivals. And the mission is to develop intercultural respect, creative expression, and science literacy. And together we imagine a better world. So the students join a team of creatives. All of my projects are collaborations. So we have scientists and artists working on this installation called Space Messengers, which again was created just during the pandemic. And so we have the particle physicists from CERN, and we have native science being represented through Lakota cosmology, astrophysics, space science, and the art includes everything from coding to sound design and projection art, interactive projection art, and VR, which we just added to create virtual reality. And so the way we do this is through collaborations with the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, of which I'm an arts envoy, US embassies and international organizations that help with the logistics of how do we find a school in another country and how do we, work with international partners. And so they really make it possible through funding and logistics. So I'm going to show you a video of the first Space Messengers installation that we completed in October that launched in Oeiras, Portugal. And the students from Taos and Oeiras participated in it. And this will give you a little overview of what we did.
We are stardust people. We come from the stars.
It's 2021, and due to the pandemic, we're locked up in our houses. But for a brief moment in time, we're connected with people around the world, and it's like a window to the universe opened up to us.
Our goal is very simple. We want to understand the universe. If you had to build our universe, what would be the bricks that you have that you can no longer take apart, right?
Space Messenger started as a workshop. We connected a classroom in Taos, New Mexico, with a classroom in Portugal. And they met every week via a Zoom with experts in the field of particle physics, space science, astrophysics, native science, philosophy of science. And then all of that content that came out of that workshop became part of the final immersive projection installation.
This is Agnes. Would you like to experience the projection on the wall? Oh, yeah, you see the same thing I'm seeing. Yeah.
About the Perseverance rover in Mars.
The students are really present in the installation. The question that came up in the workshop, the content has been partly created by them.
Eu acho que nos ajudou a perceber que está tudo ligado à ciência, às artes, à cultura, às línguas.
My word for this project is diversity, because of all the diversity of friends and the diversity of knowledge that we've learned.
Estes projetos é que realmente é a melhor
I
parte
just
da
realized
escola,
I grabbed the wrong video that doesn't have the subtitles, so I apologize.
Para fazer isto muito mais.
We treat them for what they are, which is our future youth leaders. As a result of that, they have more hope. And in turn, that gives me hope. Yeah, I grabbed the wrong one. We do have subtitles on what the girls were saying in Portuguese. So one of the things that evolved from doing this workshop is I jumped into virtual reality, which I had not personally done myself. And so we had such a positive experience with it that we're going to be expanding it this year. So what we did is that we create a 3D model of the site where we're projecting. So this is the Palacio de Pombal de Marques in Oeiras, and this is the courtyard we were given to project onto both of those walls. And so the 3D model has the actual, people can enter it, the students and the community can enter the virtual reality world and then see the actual projection on the live stream projection on that wall. And so students in Taos were able to, we set it up here on the right, we set up at the Harvard Museum a VR station. And then the students in Portugal were in the courtyard and they all received training. And then they were able to go in and see the live stream together and talk and share the experience together. So we were just dealing with all of the technology and learning about it. And now we're going to do it again, bigger. So before we just did it with the 60 students that participated in the workshop. And now we're going to set up VR stations throughout northern New Mexico. So Peñasco, Española, Santa Fe. And this way students in rural communities that not only do they not get to come to the festivals, even though it's only 40 minutes or an hour away, they'll be able to experience the installation at the festival virtually and get to learn how to create an avatar and how to participate in a metaverse. Another thing that we're doing, that we did this year that we're going to expand on, is on the left are the students that were at the Portugal Festival, and they were participated in the workshop. And we asked if any of them wanted to be STEMarts ambassadors, which means they serve as experience guides at the festival, and they serve to explain the project, show how the technology works, show them how to put on the VR headset, basically work with the public. And they had such a positive experience that we're really going to expand this beyond the students that are in the workshop. So any student now can apply to be a STEMarts ambassador at one of these events. And the events, as the festival or as the installation travels around the world, it's going to Mexico next, they can continue to participate from their home, from their rural community, in an international festival by being a virtual avatar. And the other thing, we just recently won an award from the Los Alamos National Laboratory Foundation. It's a $40,000 2-year program called the STEMarts Apprenticeship Program. So now these 5 apprentices that we select are going to be for women and girls to address the gender gap in STEM and STEAM. And they are from all of northern New Mexico. Since it's virtual, for the first time, I'm able to open it up to not just Taos, but beyond. And that we just selected our 5. And we also created another one called the Apprentice Mentorship position, which is someone who's already gone through the program and is already, like this particular one, Jade Rael, she's already a freshman at UCLA. So now she'll be a mentor to the 5 girls who are between the ages of 14 and 17. And so they get they get specific training for the whole year. They get $1,000 stipend, and they really dig into the technology training. So Space Messengers is now moving on to Guadalajara. So the 2021 was Taos, 2022 is Santa Fe schools. We have the Santa Fe Indian School and the New Mexico School of the Arts being connected to a high school in Guadalajara, thanks to the consulate there that's making the connections. And then in 2023, we're going to connect a classroom in Española with Sorrento, Italy, which is the sister city to Santa Fe, and Venice, Italy. There'll be 2 cities in Italy that Santa Fe Santa Fe Institute, which is a science think tank in Santa Fe, already has connections with these cities, which is why we chose them. So we always choose cities where we have other partners, science and art partners, and so that it becomes, so that there are many opportunities to collaborate. And that's my presentation.
Well, Agnes and Rose and Molly, thank you guys so much for presenting today. And Agnes, I'm really, really excited about everything we've seen. And maybe I wanted to kick off a few questions to you guys, but the first thing that really caught my attention was, in Ada, we work very closely with a EPA federal research lab that's focused on water research, right? And I know in New Mexico, you guys have worked with, a number of different, communities, cultural communities, scientific communities, arts communities. I guess what I'm wondering is, as we're engaged working with people that are, involved in technology, what are some good ways to approach these linkages between technology and creative industries, right? Because sometimes I think we often talk in the language of coding and computer science and tech, but I don't think we often recognize, some creative aspects of that work and how it could tie into other, kind of STEAM arts work. So what do you think are some good ways to begin a conversation between, science and the arts as we do this work, or have you done this work?
Agnes, I'll let you take that question.
Well, I think that in the presentation, you saw some examples, but if I were to kind of verbalize what I think is some of the key strategies to integrating science and art is to realize that the technology, learning the skills of technology is just a building block, and sometimes we get stuck there. And what's important is to think about the applied science, right, and the applied technology, and in particular some of the ethical questions that have to be considered in order to apply it in the real world, so that it's sustainable, so that solutions are considering the humanistic aspect. How is it helping humanity, not hurting humanity? How is it helping the environment, not hurting the environment? Basic stuff, but it doesn't always get integrated into digital technology training. So my program always works on that. That's what that model was that you saw with the 4 pillars. And you saw in the middle, it was about empathy, futures thinking, connection to self and society. And so I think always the interdisciplinary approach is key. So if we kind of keep separating things out into different subject areas and just stay there, then as a student, you don't get to, as you're learning the digital technology, you don't get to see its connections to everything around. So I would say more interdisciplinary and intercultural and intergenerational approaches is key to seeing that integration happen. And then to actually have the result of making change in the world.
Oh, that's, I think, really exciting. And I think you're hitting on something that we've noticed is that we, as we're building this entrepreneurship and technology community, we have to be very connected, right? There has to be a lot of work to bring in different people in our community who are working at different levels and levels of knowledge, right? So
the ecosystem has to be stay balanced. And this is, being very honest, when we opened the Hive, all of the co-working visitors are not from here, right? We know that with the pandemic, there was a major influx of remote digital tech workers from all over the United States to Taos, New Mexico. And my question is, so I look at that little piece of my ecosystem and I'm saying, how do I balance it? Where are my people from my community, and why aren't they using it? And, how do we, everything I look at it as how are we balancing it? Not only from, the points that Agnes brought to our attention so eloquently, but the importance of diversity, making sure that the Hive is representing our community and the resources are being utilized to support them and empower them. It doesn't matter what we're doing, whether we're farmers, whether I'm cleaning the acequia. The acequia, by the way, is it's the way we water our farms in northern New Mexico, and it's but everything the ecosystem has to be in balance. And what I love so much about Agnes's initiatives is I'm a true believer that creative thinking is key to how we continue, that it has to be number one in how we teach and train our children, and to have a better tomorrow. And we have to, at a very young age, be teaching them the importance of this balance of ecosystem. I'm very concerned that the youth of America are very disconnected from Mother Earth. That's very dangerous. And I've had this discussion with many people, because we are land rich, yet we have that's a huge opportunity. Can technology play a role? If so, how do we balance that piece of it? Because maybe that piece will engage youth interests, but we as leaders and in these key ecosystems, with the support of Corey, we always have to be thinking about how do we keep the ecosystem balanced, and not swayed one way. You know what I mean?
I love that, Rose. And it just makes me think about how, Agnes's work is so incredibly powerful for so many reasons, but two that really stand out to me are exactly what you're saying, Rose, of getting youth starting young, getting them involved in the world of, technology and science and futures thinking. I love that so much. And melding it with empathy and knowledge of self and knowledge of land and the earth and your community, and that you don't have to choose. This is something I love so much. There's not this dichotomy between you can only pick art or science. The idea that there is only one path and you have to choose it as a student or a young person is that's doing such a disservice to their life in the future and the possibilities of what they could create and bring into the world. And so the melding of art and creation of beautiful things and aesthetic things with also science and technology in the future, bringing those things together, I can't think of a more powerful initiative for children. I just think it's amazing what you're doing, Agnes, and I would love to see more projects like that across the country, and the international exchange piece, especially for rural kids, to know you like art and you like science. Fantastic. You don't have to choose. Your career and your future actually would benefit if you did both. You're young, you're getting into it early. So in the future, you're going to maybe stay in Taos and go be, like you're saying, Rose, someone who works out of the hive. Because when you were a child, it was proven or exposed, you were exposed to the idea that you can have a career in these incredible future fields and stay in your hometown where you were born and raised if you want to, and do it and be a co-working space member. So it's not all just folks not from Taos. And then to know that, that's also helping build a better future. I can't imagine a better way for kids to learn and get engaged with these concepts. So I love it. I hope that program scales to every rural community. I think especially for rural kids, giving them that kind of exposure.
I think her program should be in all 25 rural communities.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm serious. Why not? Let's come up with
scalable. I'm scalable now thanks to the VR platform. Before the pandemic, I was doing these hands-on workshops that I would bring in all these people, like the guy from CERN and the woman from Los Alamos, and we'd all come together in person. And now, because of the pandemic, I just figured out a way to do it virtually. So now it's really scalable.
Awesome. And that's a beautiful example, technology making an incredible thing scalable.
Yeah, no, but I see her program as a way to really get the youth of our rural communities excited. And it's more than that. I mean, we need Corey's help going to the state legislatures, right? Because science and math is not getting the attention. It's not, we have to, the leaders of our communities need to make it a priority. We can continue to make inroads, but it's better if we're all flowing down the same river at the same speed, and that's a huge challenge. It's sad for me to say that New Mexico, our high school graduates have a 5th grade reading ability and a 3rd grade science ability, and so we really have to work hard. When you talk about this tech scalable ecosystem we want to create, who's going to do it? It's the youth of our community that we want to get engaged into this. And so, I mean, we have to look at the very beginning, right, Molly? The very beginning, and saying what change has to happen in order to make this a reality.
So, and I think this is all, really excellent, a really good takeaway for, people, say, in Oklahoma to learn about. And one thing I'm really struck by is Rose and Molly, I got to know you guys in the context of the pandemic, right? When we started this work, it was pre-pandemic, but really by the time we got together, everything we did was virtual, everything we did was online. And I'm so glad I had an opportunity, Rose, to come out and see you and Molly and Taos and see it all kind of, come and click together. So the question I'd like to pose to each of you all is, over these past couple of years, how has your perspective changed in the work you're doing? And, what are you seeing now that you probably didn't see before?
Well, I think I think the pandemic, I'm still passionate about what we started doing and what we want to do, and doing my best to move that forward in our current environment. There's not much that gets me down. I'm a pretty positive person. So, but I think more than anything, what the pandemic really, and it's sad to say because we knew it all the time, but it wasn't obvious to us, but the digital divide, I call it, right? Businesses that were not ready, that didn't have online platforms, didn't have a way to order online supplies, that didn't even know where to begin with any type of technology to manage their business, to businesses that had no online presence and that did not have an ability, to senior citizens that didn't know how to order groceries, that didn't want to go into the store, that didn't know how to manage their smartphone. I mean, to students, 4,000 of our students disappeared. That's a problem, right? Because they didn't have access to the internet. So, those kind of things are like, wow. It really brought reality quickly to our attention. And for that reason, before the Hive was even open, we said, we need to start doing digital training classes. We need to start doing tutoring. We have to really define those tools that they need to manage in a digital world. And so I think more than anything was the digital divide, the technology divide that existed between those that don't have it and those that did. That became very obvious to me. And that really, to me, was a call for action.
No, that's great. And Molly or Agnes, I'm curious what you guys have seen, shift in your perspective.
I mean, the huge plus one to everything Rose said about the pandemic and everything over the last now 2 years really being laid bare around the rural opportunity gap, the digital divide, has only, I think, further emphasized the real need and even the urgency for this work, for broadband, for the accessibility of remote learning and education, and things like what Agnes is doing, those kinds of incredible programs that were only available in person and thus became extremely limited and difficult, to access, then becoming virtual. So that, in a way, there's so much, has been really difficult to process, I think, in collective trauma for our country and for the world. But at the same time, there are these other things coming out of it, as is always the case, where there are cracks, the light and the gold gets in, and we've seen the transformation and digitization of things that I think should always have been more accessible, or would be so much better used and served by much larger groups of people once they're online and once people can really get to them. But I think that the fact remains of how many folks do have the ability to get online and get access to these incredible programs and educational tools and connections, and also individual people. So the world becoming smaller, if we're all on Zoom, one thing I heard from a venture capitalist in Iowa, in the major metro area of Iowa versus rural Iowa, there's a lot of VC money for startups in the metro hubs, none in rural. And a VC there said, I'm more willing now than ever before to chat with anybody in even the farthest away part of this state or region on Zoom. And I would never do that, prior to this pandemic. So some folks kind of letting down their barriers, whether it's literal or artificial, to connections with other people, connections with folks in rural or more remote regions or countries, even in Agnes's case, that's something I think is despite all of the other really difficult things we've seen, a really beautiful outcome and just a way I'm thinking about work in the world and connection with each other differently, is that the internet technology, all of it's just a tool. We can use tools for the creation of amazing, more beautiful things, futures, connections, or we can use them, for other maybe more nefarious means. And I hope that as collective, individual, and societal sort of transitions continue, we can think about how we can use those tools in just ways that benefit all of us and create those futures we want to see, like what Agnes is inspiring and what's happening in Taos and in Ada every day with the work that you all are doing.
Yeah, I would say ditto to that. And I can share my particular examples of what I saw happen as a result of the pandemic in terms of addressing the digital divide. So I've always been working towards that, and my work has a lot to do with addressing the digital divide. But what I saw was that before, teachers were not even barely willing to do email with me, much less some kind of web. They didn't even have Zoom then, so some kind of web conference meeting. And so now it's just so easy because they're all up to speed on so many digital tools that they didn't have before. And it's amazing how quickly that happened. And so that's a huge change that's allowing me to access so many more teachers to provide professional development training. And then the other thing that I noticed is, like Rose said, like we had a huge drop, like thousands of students, like at the Taos Pueblo, 70% of their students were missing in action, like just not attending. And it's because they didn't have internet at the Pueblo or in their community, in their homes. And so what happened as a result of that is the Taos Pueblo mobilized and actually created 3 new community centers. They put in 3 huge trailers in 3 parts of the Pueblo, which is a lot for a small Pueblo. And they're for youth and the community, and they have technology. They got money. So money was all of a sudden available for rural communities and for digital infrastructure. So they now have those 3 community centers. They have computers in there, and we just talked about making one of those VR stations that I mentioned for this metaverse project. One of them will be housed at the Pueblo. And so they'll have 2 Oculus headsets, and we're going to provide the training, and those apprentices that I mentioned, those young apprentice girls, are going to be leading that initiative. And so, like, I also saw some really amazing positive solutions being implemented to address the digital divide that are really exciting.
Well, guys, I could keep talking all day about this, and this is really interesting, but we are coming up on an hour, and I want to respect everyone's time. So with that, I want to say thank you so much to Rose and Agnes for providing your stories and perspective. This is very, very helpful. Molly, thank you again for everything you do with Center on Rural Innovation and Rural Innovation Strategies. You're really part of this connection and this bridge to so many other communities, and it's so nice to know we have a network of peers that we can go to and share these stories with. So invaluable. So I just want to thank you all for the time this morning, and thank you all for sharing this. And I hope everyone watching, gets something out of this. If you'd like to follow up, pardon me, losing my voice here. If you'd like to follow up, you can always go to the growada.com website and reach out to me directly, and I can connect you to any of these people. And I think we'll end it there.
Great. Thank you.